Welcome to the Bearded Wonder Explains, a YouTube podcast that aims to use graphics, humor, analogy, and explanation to aid in understanding who we were so that we can better understand who we are. Today, giving a second part to my little series on aliens, which has very little to actually do with history, but it's something that I actually find to be really interesting, and I do think that kind of a historical thinking perspective lends some interesting conversation to this. We're going to talk about the theological implications of aliens, and when we do this, I want to make sure to make the claim that I'm going to be speaking mostly from personal experience, and that is within the Judeo-Christian religious worldview. So this is not really a holistic kind of evaluation of the theological implications of aliens. If you happen to be, for example, from a different faith tradition, maybe Hindu or Taoist or Muslim, I wouldn't quite be able to speak with as much authority on the theological implications of aliens. One of the popular ideas out there that's kind of related to this is the idea that aliens are demons and that they're involved in the earth as part of demonic activity. One of the problems that we have with this is that most people believe that demons and angels, for that matter, are typically in a spirit form. In other words, they're not actually physical. And most Christians and people within the Judeo-Christian worldview would even go so far as to argue that demons are prevented, like that God has to make a special exception for angels to actually become physical creatures that can influence the world directly. Now they can possess other objects within the physical world and then impact the world through that possession via a medium, if you will, but they can't do it directly. And so the problem here is that obviously if they can't do that, if they can't do what's called transubstantiate, then they can't actually cross that like spiritual physical barrier. And if that's a limitation, then they couldn't do things like build the pyramids. They certainly couldn't be building UFOs or an invasion fleet. In other words, demons don't have that capability. And so we might say that either demons are in spiritual form or demons are in physical form, and since extraterrestrials definitely seem to be doing physical things at the very least, we would assume that if there are flying saucers, then that means that they are physical beings, and that means that they cannot be demons. And so we might conclude theologically that it seems unreasonable to assume that if aliens exist, that they are demons. In other words, we might put it this way: they are probably not demons, which means that there's something else. The other thing that seems to be happening is that extraterrestrials seem to have a civilization. Anybody that's capable of producing the kind of technology that aliens produce in order to be on Earth from a faraway planet means that they have transcended what you might consider to be a baseline of civilization. And in fact, they are more advanced as a civilization than we are. And that also means that they possess the ability to cooperate with each other, to do things that really only humans can do, at least that we're aware of. And from a theological standpoint, we might also make the case that the only reason why humans can do that is because they're made in the image of God, that they possess this imago Dei that's referred to in Genesis 1, that somehow the ability to construct a civilization is related to that. And this would help explain why, why humans can do these things. So if that's true, if the image-bearingness of God is part of the ability to build a civilization, and for example, we certainly don't see other intelligent animals. Dolphins are wicked smart, and so are chimpanzees, but neither one of them possesses the ability to construct a society that actually produces any kind of lasting artifact, let alone intergalactic space travel. And so if this is true, and humans are the only ones that can participate in a sophisticated or advanced kind of narrative and storytelling, and that is the image bearing of God and facilitates it, literally makes it possible for us to live in society with each other, then the question is, if all these are kind of connected to one another, then we must conclude that aliens have the ability to construct a civilization, because we have evidence of that, and therefore they must be able to construct social narratives similar to humans, and therefore they must be made in the image of God. Now, that opens up all kinds of cans of worms. For example, did they have their own Garden of Eden? And so, when Adam and Eve fell and introduced sin into the world, whatever that actually means on a theological level, when we say the world, do we mean the universe? And when we say the universe, do we mean that the things that are visiting us now in their spaceships are tainted by original sin? Are they sinners the same as we are, whatever that means theologically? That's a really tough issue, because hypothetically they haven't even been here to know that they're sinners, right? Like Adam and Eve sinned on earth. And so do they have their own Garden of Eden? Have they fallen at all, or are they perfect beings? Or at least more perfect in some kind of sense? So that feels like heresy. And then we also have to wrestle with the idea of whether Jesus died on earth for their sins or not. Again, I guess related to that, if they are sinners, then maybe Jesus did die for their sins, but is there like an earth Jesus and a space Jesus? Like, that doesn't feel consistent, unless there's an earth Bible and a space Bible, and we're only concerned with the earth Bible because it's the only one that's relevant to our situation here on earth, and God's got all kinds of like universes running, or at least little planets within this universe, and it's basically like different prototypes of whatever in some kind of cosmic experiment. Now, we would have to kind of come up with an explanation for why that's going on, and there's nothing, at least that I'm aware of, hinted at that within the Judeo-Christian worldview, so it doesn't seem likely to believe any of that. And so maybe from a theological standpoint, if they're not demons, and they would be image bearers of God because they're able to produce a civilization, but that creates all kinds of problems, it might be more reasonable if I can't prove that they do or don't exist. That's almost impossible. Like in a universe as big as ours, to prove that something doesn't exist is an almost impossible task. And at least at this point, I cannot directly prove that they do exist either. And so I have to kind of figure out which one I'm going to put my money on, right? Like if I've got 50 chips, am I putting it all on white or on black? Well, in this case, I think I'm going to put my bet on there not being aliens, just because I'd have to answer this question of whether they're image bearers of God or not, and theologically, that's a pretty difficult question to answer. So it doesn't prove anything, but it is sort of a roundabout way of evaluating the issues surrounding this particular topic. So that's it for us this time. I hope you have a great day.